What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 414. We have a very special guest joining us tonight, Zach Miller, fresh off of his 5th place finish at UTMB. We're going to chat with him all about his recovery from his foot injuries. He's actually had a number of things go on with his foot over the last couple of years, and what it was like to deal with that, kind of come back, back to training, and then approach UTMB, which he's run a number of times, and it's an incredibly difficult race, but I can't wait to chat with him about all that went on there at UTMB. It's amazing to watch Zach race, and so I can't wait. And
yeah.
I'm just so stoked that he did so well there, and this is going to be a super fun show. So sit back, relax, everyone. Ginger Runner Live begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 414. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Tuesday afternoons to spend a little bit of it with us. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well.
We're doing something a little bit different tonight. So Ginger Runner Live, we're doing live for our GR crew members, and then it will be basically posted to the YouTube channel for everyone to watch after the fact. So if you would like to interact with our show live and interact with Zach during our live shows, just join the GR crew. It's a super cool perk that all tiers get access to. And so our live chat right now is all GR crew members. We're super excited to have them, and we would love to have you join us as well. As I mentioned, tonight we have Zach Miller, the one and only. We're so excited to talk with him tonight. It's been a long time since he's been on Ginger Runner Live. Years.
It's been a long time, but I will say Zach still is one of my favorite people to watch race.
Without a doubt, Zach races like no one else in the sport right now. He was making waves when I was getting into ultra, and it was really cool to watch him race because he races with like 150% of his energy, and it's just one of the coolest, most inspiring things to see. So we're going to chat with him tonight about UTMB, but really his journey getting to UTMB this year, because it was a long one, it was a hard one, but I think it's one that we can probably all glean some inspiration and some insight into our own lives and into our own training. So if you have any live questions, Kim, what should they do?
Yeah, if you have questions for our wonderful guest, Zach, blah. I'm stuck on my words tonight.
It's the smoke in the air. Our AQI is pretty bad here right now.
I feel like it is.
Yeah.
If you have questions for Zach, ask them in the chat. I already pulled some from our Discord server as well, but yeah, we'll be asking throughout the show.
Yeah. We'd like, before we introduce Zach, we do like to thank the GR crew. It is because of them that we're able to do these live shows. And now that we're doing the live shows with the GR crew, it's a really cool perk. And we would love for you to consider joining the GR crew. It's how we actually do everything on this channel, is because of Patreon and the GR crew. Head on over to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. All tiers get access to some super fun perks, including shows like this. One individual in particular at that top tier, Brian Sands, we like to shout out at the beginning of every Ginger Runner Live episode as well. He's just been a wonderful member of our community, as well as multiple communities through the ultra space. He's an ultra runner himself and a trail runner, but he helps so many different content creators in this space and is just truly inspiring himself. So thank you so much, Brian, for all the support. We very much appreciate it. Without further ado, coming to us all the way from beautiful Colorado, our guest Zach Miller. Let's bring him on to the show. Yay, Zach! Oh, hold on. Let me cut to him. Stand by. There he is. Yay! How are you, dude?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good, man.
Good.
Do you remember the last time we had you on? It was a long time ago, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it might have been way back after I ran Madeira.
I think it was Madeira. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
I think that might have been it. 2000. Trying to remember. I think that was like 2016.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a long time ago.
Too long, Zach.
Yeah, because I think I ran Madeira to get into my first UTMB because I needed some extra points, and they gave me an extension to get them, so I ran Madeira. So yeah, I think that was how it worked.
You've obviously been up to a lot since then, man. I feel like one thing I remember about you specifically, and probably during that interview, but your origin story is one of the coolest, most unique sort of entrances into ultra. You got your start training in cruise ship stairwells, right?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I've been a runner pretty much all my life, like
Right.
running track since 8th grade. But yeah, I was after college. I had a weird job working on cruise ships, and yeah, I used to train by running up and down the stairs in the ship and running on the treadmill. Um, and yeah, and then that's when I started running ultras, and I think I trained for JFK like that, and I trained for Lake Sonoma 50 like that because I won JFK, and then got a bunch of attention, but I was scheduled to go back and work on the ship again. So I went back and worked like 3 more months, and then jumped off and ran Sonoma and stayed off for good.
I mean, I love telling people that because people are like, oh, I love Zach Miller. And I'm always like, he trained early days on cruise ship stairwells. And they're like, what? I was like, that's a
Yeah.
lost
Yeah.
fact that I can't let just disappear because it's so fucking badass, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. Actually, the guy that crewed me in Andorra, which was the race I used to qualify for UTMB this year, he actually was a cruise ship guy too. I didn't know him. I didn't know him from my cruise ship days. But it was just kind of a funny happenstance. I met him like randomly in France, and we became friends.
Wow.
He's from France but lives in Andorra, and he was like the culinary director for the Viking cruises, and he used to work like on board, and he would do the same thing. I think he told me like run in the stairwells, and he's actually quite a good ultra athlete as well.
Wow.
But yeah, so sort of funny happenstance as well. Like he was the one that crewed me in Andorra, and we've stayed friends over the years.
That's pretty cool. Like, I mean, there's so many ultra runners that talk about skimo in the off season. Like, oh yeah, skimo's the best, or cycling, or do this. Man, just take a cruise and go in the stairwells and just
Yeah,
crush the vert, right?
yeah.
How's the body feeling? I mean, you're obviously a few weeks removed from UTMB now. You're probably already looking ahead at other things, but how's the body recovering?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, there were a few things going on. Like one, I was happy with my UTMB performance, so my mental game did not really have to recover as much because I wasn't in like a post race funk of like not being happy with myself.
Yeah.
So that recovery felt like basically almost non-existent. I just had to like forget the normal pain of like, I never want to do this sport again, but that subsides, you know. And then so the mental recovery seemed way better, but I was beat up from the race, and then I got COVID as soon as I got back. Well, I mean, I probably contracted COVID while I was there, but I didn't start like feeling crummy and taking a test until I got back. Like the day I was actually kind of really lucky because I would have felt guilty jumping on a plane, feeling sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just felt ultra tired, like normal race tired, and then the day after I got back, I woke up. I was like, I feel terrible.
Oh man.
And the next day I took a test, I was positive. But then like 10 days later, I tested negative. So my COVID was pretty mild, but it was just kind of like, well, I'm tired, but I've got COVID, but I also just ran 100 miles.
Totally.
So like, am I COVID tired or am I 100 miles tired? So it just kind of made it weird. And then, yeah, but overall it's gone pretty well. I mean, actually, after about 2 weeks, I was kind of like, I kind of feel like I could like start like I always kind of do an active recovery.
Yeah.
So I didn't run the day after the race. Ever since my ankle surgery or my heel surgery, I found that like day after an ultra race, my heel is just like no. But by the second day, it's usually pretty good. So the second day, I shuffled like 2 miles or something, and then I just like added a mile a day for like a week. But then after like 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, I kind of feel like I could run, like not like my normal training, but like I could just get back to like regular go out and run 10 miles, which was kind of like quick because usually I'm like kind of like 4 weeks is like I feel like I'm still kind of dragging,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's gone well, but it's still like some days I feel good, some days I'm like, man, I need a nap. So I think some of that fatigue is still in there.
Yeah, it's probably hard to sort of navigate. I mean, you're recovering from two things, right? You're recovering from a really hard effort at a 100-mile, tough 100-mile race, but then the COVID thing adds that wild card of like, am I recovering from the 100 or am I recovering from the
Yeah,
virus? Like, you're
yeah,
probably kind of any day is any of those things, right?
yeah. And I came right back to Colorado, so like I was also right back at altitude.
Right.
So I would go
Yeah.
out and run and be like, my legs burn, my lungs burn, like I'm at altitude, but I am at altitude. But I also have COVID, so I kind of never knew. And I also just ran 100 miles, so I kind of like for like a week I just kind of didn't know what was what. But I just sort of like I just kind of like took it easy and tried to sleep a lot, and yeah, and now my lungs don't burn anymore unless I run really hard.
We're gonna talk a little bit about you talked about your foot stuff and that whole process and that journey. So we're gonna talk about that in a second. But of course, we are live with Zach Miller for the GR Crew. Kim, what kind of questions do we have for Zach?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Brian. And Brian says, speaking of Andorra, how was the race and trail culture of that event? Similar to any other races?
Yeah, similar to Madeira. I would compare that race very much so to Madeira. Um, Probably more technical than Madeira because I don't
Mm,
remember Madeira being very technical. It's mostly just a lot of steep stuff and a lot of stairs, which are sort of a technical aspect in their own right, but it's not like a jagged rock technical. Um, I know the pictures of you see Madeira up at the top sections of the course coming across the narrow ridges look really gnarly, but those really aren't that bad. They're just kind of like exposed hiking paths. Like the footing is actually pretty good. It's just like you're on a very narrow like ledge, but
dramatic
it's not really
looking.
hard to run
Yeah.
on. So yeah, it was similar to Madeira, like just constantly like up and down. Probably I'd say one of the coolest races I've ever done. Um, and the atmosphere is cool. Um, like more mellow than UTMB. Like still like people watching and cheering, but it's a pretty small place. It's kind of just like a quiet, chill country with low taxes. So, like Andorra has kind of an interesting vibe. I mean, it's like a country of um, I don't know. It kind of feels like it's a country of like rich people and professional athletes. Granted, not that everybody there is wealthy, but I think there are a lot of wealthier people that live there given how the country functions. Um, but yeah, the course is just like super beautiful. Like you spend a lot of time just like out like by yourself, like not seeing hardly anybody, going up some like cool technical climbs and descents. It's just like real proper mountain running, but also a cool mix of like some pretty runnable terrain. So yeah,
Nice.
it has good vibes. Awesome, awesome course, but
Nice.
very hard course. Uh, so I'd highly recommend it if that type of stuff is your jam.
Nice. I do want to talk a bit about the feet because you've been on quite a journey with that injury and having to have surgery, and that's a huge part of sort of your last couple of years, I imagine. But when did you know something was wrong with your foot? Was it around the previous UTB experiences, or was it something that popped up during the pandemic? And kind of walk us through your injury journey.
Oh man, trying to think of that is um I mean, it was so long. I feel like it more or less started. I almost can't remember when it started. I think it kind of started in 2018. Um, I had really bad. I actually had a pretty good year in 2018.
Hmm.
Um, but I had like really bad plantar fasciitis in my right foot. And my surgery was on my left foot. But this is sort of how it started. I got
Right.
really bad plantar fasciitis in my right foot, and my left foot was my good foot. Um, and then think it was at the end of 2018, maybe my left foot started hurting as well. So then I had two bad feet.
Oh,
And I kept going to like all these I was going to like PTs and people and gurus and trying to figure out, what to do, and just wasn't having much success. Um, I guess I started working with a guy down in Arizona, uh, at Paragon Athletics that Rob Carr uses a lot,
mm-hmm.
and he got me doing a bunch of like he's just sort of like a self-taught guru, that like just sort of does a bunch of weird exercises, but to really target like strengthening certain areas of whatever's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And I think it was like in that time of working with him, my plantar fasciitis finally like kind of went away. Um, but then my left foot was just terrible.
Was it a similar pain, like in the right foot and the left? Like, did you assume it was
No,
plantar fasciitis?
plantar fasciitis is pretty specific, and it was a different pain than that. Um, my pain in my left was like the reason it was so difficult. I think partly was because it wasn't. It was kind of in several places. So like
Oh,
I I had like pain kind of like along the sort of under and outside edge of my foot, like up through towards my two little toes. Um, and they thought maybe it was like a peroneal tendon problem. But then I also had like really bad ankle mobility, and I had some discomfort in my heel. But usually, as I warmed up in a run, that would dissipate. They said I had a slight Haglund's deformity, but I didn't really feel like the Haglund's deformity was my primary pain. So we just kind of like pushed the Haglund's aside. But then basically, after trying a bunch of stuff, taking, PRP, taking time off, trying to fix it, doing PT, continuing to run, racing, having a lot of pain. I moved home to Pennsylvania during the pandemic in
yeah.
2020 after I left bar camp, to get buy my bus and build out my bus. And during that time, I was working with my PT in Pennsylvania and just wasn't really getting anywhere. So he so I talked to him and he recommended a surgeon, and I went and saw the surgeon, in Philly, and we redid the imaging. One, he taught me that there's different levels of imaging. Not all imaging is the same. You can
Okay.
actually have like better MRIs and worse MRIs, which was news to me. I was like, I just thought MRIs were MRIs. Like,
Yeah, same.
Right.
so we got good imaging on equipment that he was familiar with reading, and he looked at it and he was like, well, there's like a million things that ping in there. But
Oh
he's like,
God.
because I've run for a long time, but like
Yeah.
the the big glaring thing that he could see was the Haglund's deformity. And so he was like, hey, I don't know if this will fix all your issues because you have like pain in multiple areas, but this is the biggest thing I can see. And I did have pain there. So he was like, let's take this out and hopefully everything else will find its way. So that's what we did. I think it was like December 1st of 2020.
Yeah.
He cut me open and, shaved it down, sawed it down, whatever they do, and sewed me back up. And yeah, and then I started recovering. and, you know, and basically it worked. Like, it was not a light switch. It was not like I woke up and was like, oh, all the pain is gone.
Yeah.
No, it was like, I mean, it's still ongoing to some extent. I'm still, that ankle still doesn't feel the same as the right, and I don't know if it ever will. But I finally made progress to where I can have fun running again and feel good running again, and I can race and train hard. Um, but but yeah, like all last year was basically just like sort of making my way back, still mixing in day like cycling days, like not running every day.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, doing shorter races. And then this year we finally made the leap and tried the ultras.
It's, as someone, you've had running a part of your life for, like you said, like since you were a kid. When an injury like this, multiple injuries like this sort of begin to evolve, what was that mental process like for you, especially in like 2018 and 2019, and then the pandemic and like all these additional factors that sort of influence your running? How did you sort of like mentally tackle these setbacks after setbacks after setbacks?
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, especially because like growing up, I was rarely ever injured. I was just that kid who like ran high mileage and probably ran certain workouts harder than I should have, and I just kind of like abused my body, just like worked really hard, and I just and wouldn't get injured. I like every now and then I'd have something small, or there were like a handful of like things that were a little bigger, but I got over them.
Yeah.
Um, I was the kid in college who just like if something started to hurt, I just kept running, and like basically my college experience was like if something hurt, I just kept running until it hurt more and more and more, and then usually get to a peak pain point. And then once I got to that point, it would start to go down, and then I was like in the clear. That was how I navigated injuries. You know, like I remember being on a run one time in college, and my teammate Mike Bradley could tell that like coach's policy was like if it's changing your form, you have to like, stop and like take time off or whatever. I remember I was running one time and my teammate Mike Bradley called me out and he was like, "You're not like your form is off," and I probably just like ignored him, or just like was like, "Yeah, but this is just how I do it." Uh, and I remember and I did it and I just like pushed through that, probably had crummy form, and eventually I was healthy again. But yeah, so it was hard. Like, I think one of the biggest things was I just felt like I was well. One, running is a thing that I enjoy,
Yeah.
and it's a release. And like every day I woke up, basically like the first step out of bed, my foot hit the floor, and it was just in pain. And I was just like every morning, I was reminded by the fact that I was still hurt, which is very like depressing way to start your
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then runs just weren't enjoyable. They just hurt. Um, and like the thing that usually brought me like a lot of uh, like happiness brought me a lot of just like stress because you're just out there thinking about how it still hurts and like when's it ever going to get better, and this isn't even fun because it's like I'm just constantly worried that I'm going to make it worse or I'm going to be
Yeah.
broken forever.
Yeah.
So, and then I just felt terrible at my job, you know, because sponsors pay me to do this and I couldn't even really do it. Like I wasn't hardly racing, like I wasn't racing much, or when I was racing, I wasn't really racing up to like, the level that I felt like they had brought me
100%.
in to compete at.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was one of the hardest things, I think. I just felt bad at my job, and I don't want to just like mooch a job off of my past accomplishments. I want to like continue to deliver. Um, so yeah, that was just really tough.
Were you still at bar camp for some of this, or at that point had you
Yeah,
become like full-time runner and
yeah.
boss
Several
builder?
years I was still at bar camp. Like I mean, it kind of started back in 18, and I was at bar camp until 2020.
Yeah.
Um, Partway through 2020. So that was another interesting dynamic because when you live in town, like you can just like make an appointment and go see a physio or go see a massage therapist or go
Yeah.
see a doctor. I was up at bar camp like trying to heal stuff, and it's like every time I go down to town, I have to go 6.25 miles and 3,500 feet of descent down into town just to see somebody, and then I got to do 6.25 miles and 3,500 feet back up just to get home. So it's like every time you go down and get like worked on or something, you just feel like on the way home you just undo everything that was done.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so like I remember, yeah, there were a few interesting things. Like I had PRP at one point to try and fix it, and they put me in a boot, and I had to go down the mountain, and I crutched my way six and a
Oh,
quarter miles
geez.
down
Zach.
the mountain on crutches, like because I was supposed to be like non-weight bearing. So
Totally.
like,
Oh.
and I probably had a pack on too because I probably had to like carry my clothes or something.
Or groceries or
So
something. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and there were a few favors that were done, like um, when they rebuilt the Pikes Peak Railway, um, they were like ripping out all the old tracks and stuff, and we worked with the guy, like we communicated with the guys on the construction crew, and there was one point where like they gave me permission to like drive a four-wheeler down. I was like in a boot or something, so drive it down the railroad tracks. And so like there were a few favors that were done, but there was that one time I did crutch all the way to town, which was, thinking back now, I'm like, that was pretty crazy, but that was what I did. And it's on the bar trail, so it's not like it's a pretty smooth trail, but it's still like, it's still a trail.
3,500 feet and 6.25. I mean, that's pretty steep, dude. It's not flat.
And then there was and then I was always trying to still find a way to train when I was injured. So like I would have we had like a junky bike trainer up there for a while that we used to put like a knobby mountain bike tire on and just like go to town and make a ton of noise. Or like there were times when I couldn't use my legs, so I went to town one time and I bought like an old Schwinn Airdyne for like $25 or $75 or something. Like the guy who sold it to me, I think, was like, "What the heck do you want this thing for?" And I bought it, and we were doing like a supply run, and or something, and I took it up the mountain with like the supplies for camp, and like I remember it was like late at night. I like got it up there. It was like on the back of the four-wheeler because that was like the last leg of supply runs we're done with a four-wheeler. And I like hauled it over to the yurt. I was like pulling it up the like steps into the yurt, and one of the guys that helps us out there was like inside sleeping, and I was like making all this noise, and I didn't know he was in there. I think he was like, I didn't know what the heck was going on. But we put that thing in the yurt, and I just used to go you'd like go in the yurt, like light the wood stove, like in the winter, heat the yurt up, and you just sit in there and like try to sweat, like cranking your arms, like, cause I couldn't use my legs. But yeah, so bar camp was like probably not the most ideal spot to try and make it through those injuries. Other than it was always at 10,000 feet, so it was like, well, I can at least still it's easier to get my heart rate up at 10,000 feet, even if I can only use my arms.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, obviously, you're just trying to navigate the injuries, and you're probably frustrated not being able to run. I mean, you're barely able to walk without crutches and stuff like that. When you went to the East Coast to kind of move back home, was that a conscious decision because of the injury, because of the pandemic, because you just wanted to change, or like what was the step to that? Because I feel like, again, just sort of following you on social and kind of seeing your story play with the bus and the lightning tree and all the stuff that happened at home, it seemed like that was a wonderful place for you to be.
Lightning video.
Like it seemed like you really love the East Coast, and it seemed like such a wonderful place for you to kind of like get back, I think.
Yeah, I do like the East Coast. I'm actually going back tomorrow morning. I'm flying to Pennsylvania. My nephew has a birthday, so I'm gonna go back for it. Yeah, I love the East Coast. I love Pennsylvania. It's very different than Colorado. But yeah, I went back. No, I had finally decided I was ready for a change. I loved bar camp. I still love bar camp. I had a really good experience there. And I could have kept going. But I decided it was time for a change. And so I left bar camp and in 2020, and I was trying to I wanted to do like the van life thing. So I had found this like short bus in Pennsylvania, and I was trying to buy it. And so I went home to Pennsylvania to like be with my family, and I bought the bus. And then I just I didn't get the surgery right away. I was there for a while. I was trying to fix it without surgery, and then I had the bus. I was starting to work on building out the bus, and Pennsylvania was a great place for that because I have my dad does a lot of woodworking, and we had access to like great wood shops and things. And between like my dad and my brother-in-laws, I had kind of access to like all the expertise I needed to do that project. Well, and a bit of YouTube, but YouTube or the internet in general. But yeah, I don't think I decided like until the fall that I was going to do the surgery thing. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I did the imaging or maybe made the decision. Basically stopped running. Went on a kayak trip. I kayaked the entire Susquehanna River. It's a 444 mile long river that I grew up near. Like I grew up within 3 miles of it. Starts up in Cooperstown, New York, and empties in the Chesapeake Bay. So me and two people I went to college with kayaked the whole thing. And then when I got back from that, uh, I kind of really like started having all the appointments and things for the surgery, and then in December had the surgery.
When you
And yeah,
yeah, when you had that surgery, you made the conscious decision to get it fixed. Did you think that you would be competitive again? Like, was the hope there that this is going to at least get me on track?
yeah. I mean, the hope was always there. I didn't know for sure. It's a bit nerve wracking doing that surgery, especially because it's right there by the Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if that, like, it could work, it could not work. It's a bit of a roll of the dice. But yeah, I'm pretty stubborn and I really like what I do. So the whole intent was to get back. Um, I mean, the funny story there is my surgeon. He's actually a runner and a cyclist, and um, he actually fought like I didn't. He follows my running, and actually, when I went to see him, I walked in, and I walked in, and he was like, "We've met," or whatever, and I was like, "We have," and he's like, "Yeah, we met. We met in the shower at JFK." I was like, "Oh," and then I did remember, yeah, like I at JFK the second time, I basically like I don't know that I ruptured it, but I really messed up my hamstring.
Oh,
Uh, that's the beginning of Billy Yang's film with me is when I'm like writhing in pain so much. I had like blown up my hamstring that day. And I went into the showers at JFK, like hobbled in there to take a shower, and he was in there taking a shower because he had ran JFK, and we had talked to each other. He probably looked at me and was like, "That doesn't look so good," you know, and he's a surgeon and all that. But anyways, but then yeah, when I showed up to see him about my foot, he brought that up, and I was like, "Oh." So when he did the surgery, he he made me a deal. Actually, do you intend to come back to competing? And I was like, well, yeah. I was like, I that's why I'm doing this surgery, because if I was just like a non-runner and just wanted to like do normal life stuff, like I probably wouldn't be getting this surgery because
yeah.
I could bear that. But it's the running that hurts so much. So I was like, yeah, I plan to get back. So, or try to. So he was like, well, he's like, I can't control the cost of like the anesthesiologist or any of that, but I can control the cost of like me as a surgeon. So he's like, if you make it back to the sport, you have to competing, you have to pay me. If you don't make it back, you don't have to pay me. Like it's on
Oh.
like
Wow.
if your career is over, then like it's on the house. But if like I succeed in the surgery and this surgery helps you get your career back, then you have to pay me. So and then at one day he texted me and he said, your insurance paid me, don't worry, like you're all good.
I was
So our deal didn't really matter in the end anyways. um but then when I ran Andorra, I think I texted him and I was like, well, I guess if it weren't for my insurance, I would owe you a lot of money today. And so it's just kind of funny. But yeah, he still like follows me. Actually, in recovery, before I moved back out to like in the bus, we went on like 100-mile gravel ride together. Um, so which was pretty cool because I was still kind of like just getting back into running. Um, but we did that gravel ride that day, and I think it was early on. We were doing some climbs or something. And he's like, Zach, he's like, you're pretty fit. Like you're really strong. And I was like, well, yeah, I've been working really hard. It's like I can't really run like full bore, but I've been working really hard, like on the bike and whatnot. So
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
remember following you. You're doing tons of riding and like big adventures and stuff almost every day,
yeah,
right? Like huge
mostly a
rides.
lot. Yeah, mostly a lot of cycling. Lancaster's actually a really good place to cycle. And I have a buddy from high school who is a professional triathlete, and he now coaches a group of triathletes. They're Yoder Performance is the group. You'll see me talk about them sometimes on social media. And yeah, he just has this like group of like really dedicated triathletes in our area, and he was actually very uh, it was pretty neat during my injury because he had done the whole like professional triathlon thing, and I think he kind of understood the pressures and just all that mental stuff that goes on, and he had his fair share of injuries, and so he would kind of always check up on me once in a while. And like we were high school teammates, like we went to elementary school together, and he would like check in on me, and he would always like invite me to workouts and things with his athletes, even though I wasn't. I mean, he also had like a vested interest, and probably still has a vested interest in trying to get me to do Ironman, um, because he's pretty much made that clear. But in the meantime, he's just like, well, we swim at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever it is, like on these days, like you can come. And so I would, like, I'd show up at like, man, it was early, like, but it's like these guys are dedicated, like, and they're like doctors and teachers, and they're
Yeah.
swimming at like 5 a.m. and then going off to work, and I'm like swimming and then like going off to run trails or something, like, but yeah, I'd show up at like 5 a.m. and swim with them. And then they do cycling workouts. So like that was really good for me because in the winter he gave me a bike trainer. It was so kind of him. Like he gave me a nice bike trainer and was like, here, use it. And I set that thing up, and after surgery I went cranking, and they would, again, always the early mornings, they would do workouts at like 5 a.m. And I'd get up in the dark in the winter, like after surgery, and hop on this bike in the basement at like 5 a.m. with all these triathletes on Zwift because it'd be virtual.
Yeah.
And we would just get like, he would do like these threshold workouts and stuff, like really hard workouts, and I would just be down in the basement like yelling and screaming at the Zwift screen, and like it was like, but it was so good. Like it made me feel like I was like training again,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
great. And then when the weather warmed up, we'd go outside and I'd ride with them outside, and that was really fun too. And I'd be like, well, I got like an old road bike and like mountain bike shoes, but I'll show up and give you what I got. And it
No
was like
doubt.
perfect, and that's what I did. I'd go out there and hammer with those guys. So
I had PF at the beginning of this year, and that is exactly what I did. Like Zwift became my, I feel like I'm doing something and it's hard, and like really
uh-huh.
getting into it. It was kind of fun how that actually
Yeah.
worked out that way. Let's get to maybe a live question for Zach, and then we're going to start talking about UTMB, and we'll kind of wrap it up.
Yeah. This question is from Dormarked in the chat, and they said, "As a Central Pennsylvania resident, have you been have been stoked to see you do some local races, including Frozen Snot this year? How did an environmentally challenging race like that compare to your other races?"
Oh, the Frozen Snot is amazing. Like, so he's talking about there's a race in Pennsylvania called the Frozen Snot. It's like 13.2 miles. But I think I can't remember. I forget if like I want to say it's either like I think it took me like 2.5 hours or something.
Wow.
Or maybe it was 3.5. I think it was like 2.5. But this is a race that can easily take people like 3-4 hours or longer to do. Basically, they picked they picked what is traditional, whatever day is traditionally the coldest day of the year in Pennsylvania. That's when the race is, or I guess on the weekend. So
Perfect.
closest to that day on a weekend. That's when they put it, and then it's back in this part of PA with like that just sort of this mountain valley that's just like we don't have real big mountains, but this valley is just full of these climbs that are like I don't know, like 500 to 1,000 feet climb, but like Pennsylvania style. So it's just like very little switchbacks, basically just like straight up,
Yeah.
straight down. Like some of the descents are like so steep that they line them with ropes so that you have like ropes to hold on to as you go down. And then it's usually on this cold day, although we didn't have a super cold day, but it's usually like the course is usually covered in like snow and ice, you know. So you could have anywhere from like a just a dry hard packed trail to like a trail covered in snow or completely ice, or like, or it could be like a foot of
Jeez.
snow, you know. And you just go out there and hammer this course. Like I forget what the vert is on it, but it's awesome. Like I didn't win. My buddy Matt Lipsy beat me. He's one of the best runners in Pennsylvania, and he's really good at like he's just really good in general, but he's really good at that type of thing too. And we duked it out for like uh we duked it out for like 9 miles or something, and then I fell and and then I started cramping, and I was like, yeah, it's a hard race. And then he smoked me over the final mile or so, but yeah, it was great. I remember there was one particular descent that I actually set like in the race. I set the Strava record on, and some guy texted me afterwards, and he was like, "Dude, your descent of Mount Logan Direct." He's like, "That's legendary." He's like, "That's like," he's like, "I wish I could have seen that." And I was like, "I know, I wish I could have seen it. All I know is what it felt like," and it was like nuts, like because there's ropes down it, and at one point I was actually like just like shouldering the ropes like over this, and just like full bore, just like leaning in like at like at a tilt, and just like sprinting down the
Oh
hill.
my God.
But everything's like covered in snow, so it's actually like, I don't know, it might actually make it a little faster on the descent because it covers up the rocks, but still it's like, it's like we wore micro spikes the whole way, and yeah, it's just gnarly.
Are
But
you wearing
yeah,
gloves
I love
too?
I wore gloves because I like wanted to grab those ropes and just like let it rip.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wore like actually a pretty big glove. Um, but yeah, it's awesome. And there's other races there like Heiner Trail Challenge, and actually my favorite race in my hometown is this weekend. I'm like I'm gonna be home for my nephew's birthday, so I'm like very tempted to jump in, but I'm also like 4 weeks removed from UTMB and like 4 weeks removed from COVID, so
Yeah, right.
I'm like, it's like part of me is like make smart decisions, and part of me is like, but it's your favorite. So
Live life to the
yeah,
fullest. Make smart decisions. What do I do?
yeah, yeah. So, anyways, yeah, PA's got some gems, and I love running there. Actually, I did my last 2 weeks of UTMB training in Pennsylvania this year,
Sweet.
and actually managed to get like the same amount of vert as I got in Colorado training, which I felt pretty, which I was kind of proud of, but it just took a lot of reps of things, but
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was actually gonna bring that up. I know we're getting long on time here, but I was leading into the UTMB talk. You had posted on Instagram that you kind of did something atypical to your normal training and made the trek out to Pennsylvania instead of sticking within the Colorado mountains. So I was curious if you felt that helped you at UTMB mentally, physically.
Yeah, it's well, actually mentally I would say no, because I was a little nervous about the I'm more confident when I've been at altitude for a long time, because I know that like if I go lower, if anything, it should just feel better and be
Yeah.
an advantage. So it made me uneasy. I was like, oh, I only had 2 weeks at altitude in Colorado, and like then 2 weeks in PA. So mentally, no. But uh, Pennsylvania was stinging hot and humid, and I mean, it's almost like in some ways it just feels like a trade. Like you swap the altitude effort for the heat humidity effort,
Sure.
and then all that training benefit that you do get from heat training. Like I think that was good. I remember I remember like race day UTMB. I like went outside or something, and I my girlfriend was around, and I was like, well, I was like, I think the Euros would say it's humid. So maybe Pennsylvania was worth it because it wasn't like mega humid, but it was like, I think it's enough that like people from Colorado and like maybe certain parts of Europe would say this is humid, and I'm like, that's like all we did for 2 weeks, pretty much.
So yeah, maybe a
Um,
little advantageous, right? You had a little
yeah,
heads up.
yeah, and then all the steep like straight up, straight down, rocky stuff that's in PA. I think that was good training for UTMB. It made me like feel confident in like my downhill legs and yeah, just my ability on like that more technical terrain.
You know, you've had amazing experiences at UTMB. You've had some rough experiences at UTMB. What brought you back this year again? And sort of what was your strategy going into it? You know, I'm super curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, what brought me back is simple. Like, no American male has ever won it, so that carrot is like
Yeah.
perpetually out there for me. Actually, when Jim was like, for a while it looked like Jim might win. And Tom Evans, we were back there, but we're getting updates of how the guys looked in front of us. And when Jim, you know, like he ran a great race, but like when he lost the lead and didn't win, like to be honest, I was like a little disappointed because I was like that because even though like I'm there because I want to chase that same thing,
Yeah.
being the first to win. Don't know if I'll ever do it, but I want to have I want to have my foot in that game. But at the same time, when he did it, when I was kind of like, man, why couldn't he have just won and like freed me of this carrot? Like I've been
Yeah.
chasing this carrot for so long. Like I could have been free. I could have gone and run whatever I wanted after that. But now I was like, dang nabbit, now we got to come back again. Like, but yeah, so that's like why I was back. And then my strategy, I don't, and maybe I need to have more strategy, but I feel like I'm not like a mad scientist strategy guy out there. Like, because I guess to me it's kind of like you've got what you've got in terms of fitness, and strength, and you just kind of go out there and lay it all out there. And if it gets the win, it gets the win, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like there are some like can be some strategic stuff of I'm going to attack this climb or I'm going to attack that climb, but
Sure.
like half the time it doesn't even go how you plan it to anyways. So no, I really just wanted to get in that. I was hoping to be able to get in that lead group and not, I didn't want to push that group to go any faster than necessary. Like I didn't want to make that group go faster. I just wanted to like be with that group and go as easy as I could within that group. And I was hoping that would feel easy, although it was very, very much knew that it might not feel easy. And then just kind of like hang in there and see what happened. That was essentially my strategy. And then just like eat and drink and like that's all done on like timing on my watch and stuff. I've kind of like gotten a lot better at that over the years, like setting a timer and like every time it goes off, I eat so many calories and I finish bottles by certain points in the race and refill them. And yeah, so, but yeah, not too complicated.
I know this might not be a hard-hitting question, but it's something that we talked
about.
Oh
my God, yes.
And it's something somebody on our Discord server asked about as well. You're just mentioning eating and drinking.
This is going to be some inside baseball stuff, but Zach, we've been dying to know what's up.
So we did get a glimpse of you at one of the aid stations.
I think it was Courmayeur.
You did a fancy
flask
bladder.
You bet. The bladder refill.
People have been asking about this. Well, like I'm an engineer, so I'm always like, like, well, this is what I want, but nobody makes it, so how do I figure out? Because I like the water I like my water on my back, not up front. I don't like bottles like up on my chest. So for years at UTMB, I've been carrying my water behind me. But like I've had some pack changes over the years, so I've kind of had to modify how I do it. And this year at Andorra, I figured out that what I do is I get these 1 liter soft flask bottles. They're just like bottles. They're not Camelback bladders. They're just bottles, and they're 1 liter. And I rig them up so that I have, instead of like a little, like alien short straw hose coming out, I have a long, like Camelback type straw coming out. And yeah, so in Endora, I went to a store and found, like, I cobbled together. They probably wonder what I was doing. I bought like all these different bottles, like 2 main different bottles and different hoses, because I had to take like parts from like 3 different products. And like, okay, take this off. I need the cap from this, and I need the plug from this, and I need the hose from this, and boom, I have what I want. So yeah, and then to refill it, I used to take the bottle out and put it back in, but in my North Face pack, it goes at the bottom of my pack and it stays there all race. So what I do is I take in aid stations, I take the mouthpiece off, and I have another 1 liter bottle just like it. But on the end, it has this like conical nose on it. And I take that and I shove it into the hose, and then I just squeeze it until it all goes in. And then I pull that off and pop the mouthpiece back on, and I just keep going.
It's freaking brilliant.
So,
like
yeah, well,
when you were
to
doing it,
John
I was like,
Albin.
go ahead.
The funny thing is, John Albin and I, he's North Face teammate too, and we became friends this year. And before the race, we were showing each other our setups. And the weird thing is, we hadn't talked about our setups, and we showed our setups. We oddly had very similar, like, pieced together setups. Different. His was different, but it was like oddly similar. And I was like, we didn't even talk about this. But he looked at mine, and he's because mine was maybe a little more convoluted. But like, he looked at mine and he was like, that's a really weird way of doing that, but also very brilliant. I was like, well, yeah. So, yeah, it works. Actually, if I can get like HydroPack or somebody to like cooperate with me, not that they've been uncooperating, just if somebody wants to partner with me, what I really want is a nozzle on the end that's a valve that is a Y.
Yeah.
And one is for drinking and one is for refilling, and then it just has a switch, like a switch that you put it to drink or refill, so that when I get in the aid station, I can just switch it over to refill and put
Rather
the
than
bottle
have
on
to
and
take
refill,
off.
and then I can switch it over to drink and pull the bottle out and be on my way, and I don't have to take nozzle off. That's what I want. That's like my ultimate.
We need someone to work with you on this, because we certainly, I think I started like Googling and scouring, like, does this thing exist? Did Zach get this 3D printed somewhere?
They had great
No.
footage. They showed the whole thing.
We were
and
both like, what?
I was like, I know what is happening here. But what I thought you had done was like had a 3D printer and like designed all the pieces, and like this was an original one-off.
No,
it kind of was, but just they exist.
Yeah, all the pieces exist. You can buy them all at some store in Andorra. But you just have to like buy 3 different things and put them all together. Like, so yeah, that's, yeah. But if anyone from HydroPack hears, I'm all ears to co-design the last piece of the puzzle. But yeah, I can even like, because in Andorra, I was even just like getting bottles and just leaving the aid station with the bottle and just doing it like just squeezing on the trail. Because then I just stash that bottle away somewhere in my pack and save it. So, and I'll put the powder, pre-fill the powder in my next bottle, so that at aid station, I just pop it open, put the water in, and then squeeze it in the back.
And it's all filled,
so
yeah.
I
Smart.
don't have to carry a Ziploc baggie of powder or anything. So, or at least not all the time. So
I think what we're missing is like, I think bladder, like using a bladder has kind of gone away during racing, because it is such a cumbersome thing to pull off your pack and pull the bladder out, and it's always cumbersome, and you hand it to a volunteer, and then the volunteer is messing with it, and like if the system is different than what they're so what you've done is you've made a solution that allows you to use the bladder. You can keep the water off the front, the weight's in the back, it's evenly distributed, and the refill is quick. I mean, it happened while you were sitting there at Courmayeur. You were eating and drinking. It was awesome, dude. It was awesome.
Yeah, they were commentating on it in Court of My Air. I think it was Martin Gaffuri. And
Yes,
he was
Martin.
like, UTMB commentating cracks me up because like they're talking about us eating and changing shoes and like drinking, you know. And it's like, oh, and now he's eating a Snickers bar. I wonder if it's a special Snickers bar, like, you know. But they're like, and now he's refilling that bottle. We've never seen this before. And I was like, and they were talking about it, and I was just sitting there. I was like, yeah, I'm a stinking engineer. I don't know if you can hear it on the live feed, but some guys, there were spectators on the side, and they like laughed when I said that. Yeah, so yeah, it's like it's I did it at Andorra and I did it here. And it's just a little funny when you show up to meet your crew to explain them what you're going to do in the race, and they're like kind of like puzzled, like, wait, you're gonna do what? It's like, no, it works, trust me.
It makes perfect sense. And visually, it was like, yep, I know exactly how that's working, and it's fantastic.
It looks super cool.
It looks super cool. And the commentating about, we were surprised too by the commentating. Like they were talking about people eating pizza, like Marianne, for example. We had her on the show recently. They're like, oh, she's eating pizza and a Coke. We've never seen that before. I'm like, have you been to an ultra, Martin? Like, come on, go furry. You know this business. It's all pizza and Coke. Well, let's wrap it up here, Zach. I kind of want to finish with maybe a thought that you have now removed from UTMB. You had a great race, man. You had an amazing race. I love watching you race. Kim and I talk about this a lot. Like you run with this passion, and you run. It's this energy that is. It's Zach Miller, and there's no other runner right now on the scene that's really coming at the game with the same sort of style of run that you have. And I'm curious if this fantastic result at UTMB provided you with any insight, or like what are you able to pull away and glean from this experience, this particular race, this sort of comeback, if you will, and kind of push into your training and racing in the future?
I mean, I think this year this year I kind of maybe really learned to how to like move through the mountains, like just like efficiently, like with efficiency as the goal, rather than like in years past I was always kind of like, it's a running race, we got to run everything, you know, and I was kind of like run at all costs. And I think this year at Andorra, especially in Andorra, and then here, I just kind of like, I spent the winter Nordic skiing and split boarding. So I got a lot more familiar with poles, and I think I just kind of learned that, like, you know, it's about moving through the mountains as fast as you can, and that means going as efficiently as you can. And so I think that was one big takeaway for me. And then I think another takeaway right now is just though that, like, you know, I'm curious what I can do, you know, like moving forward, given that I stay healthy, because my lead up to this was certainly it was strong, preparation was good, but it was certainly not the like textbook approach that I would have written out, given that all things are healthy. I mean, I ran in I mean, goodness, I like this like multiple month build, you know, and I ran Andorra the same day as Western States, you know. So I did like 2 weeks of active recovery, 4 weeks of hard training, and 2 weeks of taper. And and years ago, I probably would have been like, that's not enough, man. I can't prep UTMB in that. So I think that was another takeaway, just that, like, you know, there is a way to do races, you know, sometimes with a shorter block, but you have to be focused, and like things have to kind of go right. But also takeaway of like, I wonder what I could do with, like, you know, if I can keep this ball rolling and stay healthy. I wonder like what more might be in the tank for future years.
It's super fun to watch you race. It's even more fun to watch you have a great race, because you are, I mean, you've been such an amazing athlete for so long. It's really great when you, as a fan of Zach Miller, to see Zach Miller get the rewards that you so much deserve. And it's fantastic, man. A huge congratulations on 5th place at UTMB this year, amongst one of the most stacked fields that we've seen in memory at that race, which is another big testament to your skill and ability this year. We can't wait to see what happens next, Zach. We love following you. We love following your adventures. Is the bus still running? Is the bus still working for you?
The bus is actually in the shop right now.
Oh no.
No, it'll be all right. It should be all right. But I'm waiting for it to get back. It actually, I actually like last spring. It's a '98, and like last spring, I made the decision to put a new engine in it. I put a Jasper Reman engine in it. And so that engine came with a 3-year, 100,000-mile warranty. And I had a glitch with it this summer. And fortunately, it should all be covered by warranty.
Oh, good.
But I'm waiting for the shop to. It's like in the line of projects. So I've been bumming around with my very nice friends here in the Springs. And then hopefully in like a week or two, I'll have it back and then be back on the road. So, but
Sweet.
yeah, the bus has been great. Otherwise, it's just every now and then I have to give my house away for a little while to get some things taken care of.
No doubt. Well, if the bus happens to make a trip up to the Pacific Northwest, man, let us know. We'll find a place for you to park it up. And there is a bit of chatter here in the chat room. Someone, Patricia says maybe a Lopez valve would work. I don't know if you're familiar with a Lopez valve.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not. But I think we've got it. No, thanks for the tip. But I think the guys at the shop have got it figured out now, so we should be good to go.
Oh, I think she meant for the water system.
For the water system.
Oh,
for the water system.
Oh, I thought you were talking about my bus.
I think
valve. Okay, I'm gonna
Lopez valve.
I'm gonna have to look that up. A Lopez
Yeah, I think
valve. Yeah.
And Heather Reed's like, anyone else Google what Lopez valve is? Just me, and that is a brilliant suggestion. So maybe Lopez valve is the solution.
I'm gonna look. I had done a little Googling myself back this summer, but yeah, Lopez valve. I'm gonna go look that up.
Our guest tonight has been the incredible Zach Miller. We love following this athlete. Zach, can you let people know where they can find you on social media and stuff like that, and continue to follow you and support you?
Yeah, mainly Instagram. Zach Miller 38 is my Instagram handle. That's where I'm most active. I am on Twitter, but I rarely say anything or read anything. And then I read a column for Iron Far called Finding Words. Comes out third Friday of every month. So if you want to hear me ramble about various topics, you can find me on there as well, ironfar.com.
Fantastic. Our guest tonight has been the incredible Zach Miller, placing 5th at UTMB after multi-year injury recovery and build, and it's just an amazing story. We're so glad that he was able to join us tonight. We apologize. We were going to have him on last week. We ran into some technical issues. Zach was so kind and like, yeah, don't worry about it. We can reschedule. And so we're thankful to have him tonight. Before we wrap up the show, though, we do want to recognize members of the community. We call it our crew member of the week. Kim, who is this week's crew member?
This week's GR Crew Member of the Week, I'm giving it to Andrea and Brian Morrison, the race directors of TNOA 100, who pulled off two amazing events this past weekend, and it was also just Brian's birthday.
It was also Brian's
Congratulations,
birthday.
Brian and Andrea.
Congratulations. TNOA 100 and the Teeny Way 50K happened this last weekend, and they are brutal races. We did have some crew members run them as well, so congratulations to them. But that wraps up Ginger Runner Live, episode 414. Thank you so much, everyone. You know what to do. Go follow Zach. Thank him for being on the show. He's just a wonderful human and an awesome athlete to follow, so we appreciate him tonight, and we appreciate you as well. If you'd like to watch further episodes of Ginger Runner Live, join the GR Crew. Head on over to patreon.com/The Ginger Runner. All tiers get access to Ginger Runner Live and our daily live show, and GR's coming up and all that good stuff too. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ginger Runner.